Hey everyone, welcome. It's Naomi, and today I want to teach you how to do a sun salutation. Now you're probably thinking, but Naomi, I know how to do a sun salutation. Everybody knows how to do a sun salutation. And you probably do. You've probably done lots of sun salutations over the course of your yoga life. But what I want to do is actually break the sun salutation down into its pieces and give you a little bit more insight into some of the really important foundational elements so that you not just do a sun salutation, but you do it really skillfully and you do it without putting yourself at risk for injury or misalignment or, just kind of feeling like something is a little off, right? Hey, here's a question. When was the last time that you went to a yoga class where the teacher who was teaching the class actually taught you how to do a sun salutation? Go ahead, raise your hand. Anybody? Okay, probably not. Probably not, because usually if you go to a vinyasa class, the teacher just kind of assumes that you know how to do it. So today, I'm not going to make that assumption, all right? Now, what I am going to assume is that you do know what the poses are, so I'm going to assume that you know downward facing dog, plank pose, chaturanga, cobra pose, and Tadasana. I am going to make those assumptions. If you don't, please check out my beginner series, and I will leave a little link for that in the videos at the very end, in the end credits, so you can take a look there. But otherwise, I'm going to break it down just a little bit so it's more clear. So let's get started. So first things first, come up to stand at the front of your mat. So sun salutation is it's very, very simple. There are 5 poses in a sun salutation. 6 if you include the lunges, which I think are important. Okay, so the poses in a sun salutation are Tadasana, right? Arms up. Okay, there are 7. I lied. Tadasana. Okay, then your lunge. Okay, now the lunge can either be here in a lunge or it can be a high lunge. It can be warrior 1. That part isn't as important. That's why the lunge sort of counts and sort of doesn't. Okay, then you've got your downward facing dog. Okay, then you have plank, chaturanga, cobra, or up dog, depending on your practice. And those are the poses, right? Because you end up right back in downward facing dog. And you can walk back or jump forward and stand up, okay? Pretty basic, pretty standard. So that's sort of the most basic sun salutation that you can do, okay? So all that said, a couple of things that I want to clarify for the sun salutation. First things first. When you fold forward into a forward bend, and this is the very first piece, right? Arms go up. Okay, if your shoulders are tighter or your low back is tighter, having your arms up is going to be a little bit more strenuous for your upper and lower back. Okay, because when you fold forward, ideally, you're lowering down long spine, strong legs the whole way. Okay, so a lot of times you might hear something like swan dive forward, which for some people becomes this like exercise in modern dance, all right? Now, there's nothing wrong with swan diving forward, okay? That's mostly just a language thing. What does become problematic is if you disconnect from the power of your legs or if you're not really thinking about what your head and your feet are doing. So if nothing else today, what I really want you to connect to is your foundation. And in your sun salutations, the foundation is your hands and your feet, okay? So as you come up to stand at the front of your mat, plant your feet securely on the mat, root through your feet, and as you inhale, reach up. Now keep your arms and your legs strong, and you can either keep your arms over your head or bring your palms together in front of your chest as you lengthen forward. Strong legs the whole way. Okay? Take a full breath in. You don't have to lengthen forward. You can stay right where you are. Full breath out and step your left leg back into a lunge. Okay, since this is the first one, this is where you are. So when you step back into a lunge, your hands should be lined up about with your foot. Okay, now if you get stuck over your front leg, meaning it feels really tight there, you can always bring your right arm to the inside of your right leg. Okay, so you don't have to have your arm on the outside, you can have your arm on the inside to give your torso more space. Okay, then you go right back, downward facing dog. Okay, now, when you come into your downward facing dog, your hands should be as wide apart as your shoulders, feet as wide apart as your hips. And when you come into plank, that's how you know the downward facing dog is the right length. Okay, your shoulders should be directly over your wrists in plank. Your finger pads really squeezing the mat. So remember your hands and your feet today. Your feet pressing into the ground, and you don't want to feel like your feet are too far back, right? So that your arms are at an angle. And you also don't want to feel like you can't go all the way forward into your plank because you'd be too far forward. Okay, so you want it to be just right. And I'll show you a way to measure planks that feels just right, but for now you've been here forever. So lower down chaturanga, press into your hands and feet, and then pull through cobra. And we'll talk about that transition in just a minute. Push back, downward facing dog, and then whichever leg you stepped back, you're gonna step it forward. Now, in order to get your leg forward, you might have to get your left hand out of the way. Okay, so as you step your leg forward, you can move your left hand, place it down, and then step up into a forward bend. Okay, then for me, to be steadier, I like to bring my hands to my hips. You can too, or you can bring your palms in front of your chest. Okay, the final option is arms alongside your ears. It just asks a lot more of your body, so pick the variation that you want, but come all the way up to stand with strong legs. Okay, basic sun salutation. Okay, now we're going to add to it and get a little bit more clear about some of the other parts. So that first one was all about the lowering down and lifting up and where to place your legs. This next one is a little bit more about the transitions, okay, between downward facing dog, plank, and chaturanga, all right? So inhale, reach your arms up. And again, you can choose what you do with your arms. So I like palms together in front of my chest because it gives me a little bit more connection to my core. Lower down. Take a full breath in. Full breath out. This time, step your right leg back into a lunge. And remember, if you feel like you're kind of stuck over your left leg, you can always bring your left arm to the inside of your left leg. Okay, now just for fun, hands up. So you're in this high lunge version of warrior one. Back leg is really strong, so instead of like letting that back leg kind of hang out, energize it, right? Firm up your right leg. Reach your arms up or palms in front of your chest, and that's really determined by the mobility and happiness of your shoulders. Okay, and then lower your hands to the floor and step back, again, downward facing dog. Now, one of the ways that you know the right distance, and I'm just gonna go back here, notice that when I stepped my left foot back, my right hand actually didn't move, and neither did my right foot. So one of the ways that I know that it's the right distance is that it's where my lunge is the distance, okay? So it's the distance of my lunge is also the distance of my downward facing dog. Okay, now don't worry whether or not your heels come to the floor in downward facing dog, but do plant the balls of your feet and your toes, plant your fingers in the circumference of your palm, and then inhale forward to your plank. Okay, now when you lower down into chaturanga, imagine that you're pulling the floor up to you. Keep your head lifted as you lower down. Only lower as far as you can hold it well. Then pull through into cobra pose. We'll go over that transition one more time in the last sun salutation. Okay, and then press into your hands and feet. They don't change. You push back into downward facing dog. Okay, now this time you're going to step your right leg forward. Okay, so look up where your hands are. Lift your right leg. And then get your right hand out of the way. And your foot goes right to where your hand was. Okay, now if you have trouble getting your foot forward, you can always step it part of the way, grab your ankle, and step your right foot up to where your hand was. Okay, again, your right arm can be on the inside of your leg. That's up to you. Oops. Then on the first side, remember we did that high lunge version of warrior one to squeeze your legs a lot. Maybe arms up, maybe palms together, hands at hips. The arms are kind of the least important part of this pose, but they are the flashiest, right? They get to celebrate. Put your hands on the ground and step up into your forward bend. Okay, hands to your hips, or palms in front of your chest, or even arms alongside your ears. Pick the one that you like the best, root down through your legs, and inhale as you rise up. Okay, so that's number 2. Okay, so what's really important to take away in that one is the distance. Okay, so the distance of your lunge, where your front foot is and where your back foot is basically the difference, or the distance rather, for your downward facing dog, your plank, and your chaturanga, and your cobra. You don't really want your hands to move. You don't want to lift them up. Okay, you don't want to lift them up because as soon as your hands come away from the floor, you've now uprooted your foundation. And that's the most important piece of your sun salutation. Okay, that and maintaining strength through the transitions, right? Maintaining integrity through the transitions, because it's in the transitions that your body is most vulnerable, because it's usually when you're not paying as much attention, right? Because you just want to get through it. You're like, oh my God, I hate chaturanga. Let's just get top dog, down dog, right? You know, so instead of like blowing through the transitions, pay attention through the transitions. Okay, last one. So this one, we're going to talk about that chaturanga cobra transition and the transition if you weren't stepping back into a lunge, but actually just going forward, jumping, okay? So plant your feet, root them, inhale, reach your arms up, and then choose the arm position that you like the best, that supports your body as you bring your hands to the floor. Take a full breath in, full breath out. Okay, place your fingers, if not your whole hands down, and again, that's dependent on the mobility and the strength of your hamstrings. And step back, this time into downward facing dog. So you don't have that lunge to judge, you don't have that lunge to help you. You can test it out by just making sure it's where your plank pose is. Okay? And then inhale forward into plank. Now this is where it gets really important. Okay? Instead of lowering all the way down and hitting the deck after chaturanga, I want you to just lower down through chaturanga, press into your hands, and before you hit the floor, pull through into cobra. Okay? Now why that? Well, that's a good question. So before we do it again, I'll answer that question. I'm just backing up so I have a little bit more space, otherwise I wouldn't be moving my foundation. Okay, so a lot of times what happens is we lower all the way down, and we do it without as much integrity because we're just trying to get to the floor. But what if the goal wasn't the floor? Okay, what if the goal was actually maintaining shoulder integrity through the transition, right? Because as soon as you get to the floor, it's like, oh, I gotta lift myself up, and I don't gotta go down, oh, this is so hard. Okay, what if it was not about going all the way down? What if it was just about maintaining shoulder integrity through the transition from plank pose to chaturanga to cobra and then back to dog? Okay, that's what I'm putting to you as the transition. So instead of going all the way down to the floor, lower to the point where you can maintain your shoulders, okay? Maintain the strength of your shoulders and then lift up into cobra. Okay, now another way to find plank while we're here, place your hands as wide apart as your shoulders. Okay, so this is just a way to get into plank without having to go into dog first, and just to make sure your plank feels steady. Step your left foot back. Okay, now when you step your left foot back, don't push back off of your hands. Keep your shoulders directly over your wrists. Step your left foot back, push into your foot and lift your right knee. Okay, don't step your foot back. Instead, root down from your upper back through your arms. So your chest moves down, but your belly and your knees stay lifted. And then step your right foot back. Now you're in plank. And it also feels more real. Now keep pressing into your hands, lower, chaturanga. So you might not get as far as you usually do. Pull through, cobra. So I prefer cobra, mostly because it helps to maintain your shoulders on your back, but you certainly could do up dog. Okay? But I'm going to stick in cobra, and then I go right back downward facing dog. So you'll notice my shoulders, they don't lose their integrity the whole time. So let's do that transition one more time. Come forward into plank. Okay, lower down all in one piece, only as far as you can go. So if that's not very far, right? If it is very far, great. Only lower as far down, back to dog, as you can maintain your transition from chaturanga to cobra. Now, because you're going from dog back into uttanasana, you have two options. Okay, you can walk your hands back to your feet, okay, which is a little bit steadier for your legs and your low back, or you could hop forward. Okay, so bend your knees, look forward of your hands, push into your hands, don't let them leave the ground, and jump up. Okay, now, just like in the other poses, and we'll go back, it's really important to not lift your hands away from the floor. Okay, so when you think of jumping up, think of it as like, it's preparation for handstand, basically. Now, I'm not going to make you do a handstand, but the idea is that you're prepping your body to bear weight on your arms. So if that doesn't feel like a fun idea for you, don't jump into handstand. Or don't jump into handstand, but don't jump into uttanasana. Right? Walk your hands back to your feet or step your feet forward. If you are curious, though, about strengthening your upper body and prepping for something like handstand, or just feeling stronger, right, and more capable, right, then what you can do is you can practice a few jumps, just bending your knees. Try to tap your butt with your heels without lifting your hands, without bending your elbows too much. And then after doing a few of those jumps, then you jump and land in uttanasana, okay? And then root down through your legs, hands to your hips, come all the way up to stand. Okay, so that's your quick and dirty sun salutation tutorial. I hope that you found it useful. If there's anything that I didn't answer, any questions that you have about any of the poses that I didn't answer in this particular tutorial, please feel free to ask in the comments below. I just want to make it a little bit easier for you to feel more confident and more sure in your sun salutation, so that next time you go to a flow class, you're not like, oh, am I doing this right? But that you actually know that you're doing it exactly in the way that you're supposed to, okay? And that even if it's still hard, even if parts of the sun salutation are still hard, you feel like you are moving forward and working on your strength instead of feeling like you're not really sure what you're doing or where you're going. So, like I said, if you have any questions that I didn't answer, please leave them in the comments below. Thanks for hanging out with me on the yoga mat. And as always, if you want more, subscribe. So you can subscribe in the bottom right corner. But for now, have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you on the mat again really soon. Bye.